Hello again. Here is my second video of the day, and this one is about a topic that's pretty close to me, and that is child abuse. And I play World of Warcraft, as you can see, and I don't usually like to spend a lot of time communicating with the other players. I like the intelligent aspects of the game. I like how many things you have to think about and how many things you have to learn and the math you have to do and all of the different things about your spec that you need to learn and just everything. You have to have at least half of a brain to play the game. That's what I like about it, but the community is really immature because it's mostly teenagers or angry people that don't have anything else to do with their life, so they play online all day long. I don't really like to converse with them, but I was in what they call trade chat on World of Warcraft, and it's basically like the main chat channel of all the people playing at the time, and people were saying things like, sometimes you just have to smack your kid. Sometimes you just have to beat your kid. Rah, 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 anger, anger. And so I said to them, you know, we're not talking about moral standpoints here, which I obviously think that it's a negative thing just based on moral standpoint, but I'm talking about logic. It doesn't work to beat your kids. It just doesn't, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about in this video. I have worked with kids, at-risk youth mainly, for the past, 8 years almost. Holy shit, that's a long time, but yeah, about 8 years I've been working with kids with various disorders, and pretty much the worst of the worst. The kids that have been through things that you can't even fathom, that I don't even like to repeat because I can't emotionally feel for them because it's so awful. I would just collapse inside, you know. But so I have experience working with terrible, terrible children. So when people say, you don't know my kid, you don't know what my kid's like, I need to do it, it's the only way they learn. Well, that's not true, because I've worked with kids who will basically try to kill staff. I literally have had to run over fences and jump into traffic to put kids in holds that have tried to run away from the shelter before, because that's the type of behavior that they have. But you know what? Beating them would never have helped. It would have made the house chaotic and would have made everybody decline. And there's a lot of reasons that physical abuse doesn't work, and I'll just talk about a few that I know of. I know that the main reason it doesn't work is because it makes your kid hate themselves. It makes them think that they're bad. When you're spanking them and telling them that they're bad, even with an open hand, even the legal way with an open hand on the butt, you're telling them they're bad. You are not really giving them a good grasp on why what they did was wrong. You're basically just slapping them and telling them they're a bad kid. And so they internalize this as hating themselves. And when somebody hates themselves, they become a self-fulfilling prophecy, which means that they think they're a bad kid. So inside, he thinks he's a bad kid because Daddy tells him he is when he spanks him, which means that he's never going to be anything else. He's subconsciously going to do things that will get him stuck in that position. So this means that if he thinks he's a bad kid, he'll behave like he's a bad kid, even if he's not doing it on purpose, because that's all he thinks of himself. It's really contradictory to punish a child for doing something negative with something negative, because not only are you making them hate themselves, but you are teaching the children that violence is an okay solution for problems. And in the real world, is this the case? I understand that we have completely illegitimate wars going on over things that are lies in other countries, but honestly, in day-to-day, can violence solve your problems? It can't, because if you punched every person in the face that disagreed with you or did something you didn't want them to, you'd be in jail for who knows how long, forever. If you got out and continued to do the same thing, you'd just be in jail for the rest of your life. So you're not teaching a kid how to overcome their problems in any other way but violence. That's the example that you're leading for them. You're teaching them that if you have a problem, be violent. And so this is also perpetuating the cycle, because these kids oftentimes will go to school and get into fights and call kids names and bully kids, and it's because that's what you taught them, but then they get in trouble for doing that. So you're teaching them to be bad by being violent. You're teaching them they can be violent to solve a problem by being violent to them, And then they're taking it out on other kids, so they're being violent with problems at school, and then the parent gets mad at them again. So do you see how this is a big cycle? The parent is causing this violence. The parent is causing this violence, and yet they're punishing the child for it, that they did in the first place. So it doesn't really make any sense. And it's like that old saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. It's true, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 wrongs make things ultimately much, much worse. And you're giving him or her, you're giving your child no skills to be able to accept responsibility and stand up for themselves. Another reason this doesn't really work is because it doesn't make your kid understand the reasoning behind why what they did was wrong. They just understand that they got in trouble and they got hit, and now that's the end of it. And so you're not teaching your kid what is acceptable behavior and what is unacceptable behavior. You're just teaching them to fear you. And there's a lot of consequences from doing that. One of them is that it makes him only behave, or her, only behave in order to satisfy you, not because they know it's the right thing to do. So basically, they're trying to be good so that they're not going to get caught, not because they want to be good. Whereas with other methods, kids want to be good because they want to be good, because they get praised, because they get a better lifestyle if they are well behaved. But in an abusive home, kids want to be good because they're afraid. They want to be good to avoid punishment. This is much like a criminal, say a burglar, who doesn't steal things because he doesn't want to go to jail. He doesn't steal things because he knows it's wrong. He steals them because he doesn't want to get caught. And that's exactly what your kid is going to start doing. They're not going to know what right or wrong really is. They're just going to be afraid of you and afraid of doing something wrong that they don't even really understand in the first place. So it's going to put your kid on edge all the time around you. Oh, and another thing that happens with that is once you spank them, that's it for them. For a child's brain, when you spank them, that is them accepting punishment for what they did. They don't see that as, this means I need to change my future behavior, because they already think that that punishment closed that problem. So say if your kid is pulling the cat's tail, and you say, stop pulling the cat's tail, and he pulls it again. So you go over and spank him. He thinks that it's done now. He doesn't understand that that means stop pulling the cat's tail. Once the spanking happens, the child's brain just accepts it as the end, and they don't know any better than that. They don't know how to change the behavior or how to act the way that you want them to. So all of these things in the long run make it harder for you to want, or for them to be who you want them to. So in beating your kids, you're really just making it harder for yourself. Another thing that's really silly about abusing kids at a young age is that when they're a teenager, it's not going to work. You can't hit your kids when they're a teenager because they'll hit you back. So what happens? Now you don't have any form of parenting because all you know how to do is hit your kid when they do something wrong. You don't have the skills to parent, and they don't have the skills to know how to behave for you because of the way that you started when they were young. I mean, think about that. If you're hitting your kid now, if they're 5 years old and they piss you off, so you spank them when they don't listen, well, when they're 15, it's not going to be like that, and they're going to be even worse and more defiant. So how are you going to parent and control that behavior at that point? Another thing that you're doing in hitting your kids is teaching them how to deceive you. So instead of behaving because they know that it's the right thing to do and that it's morally right, they will manipulate and do things so that they don't get caught anymore. So they won't stop the actual behavior that you don't like, they'll just do it in a different place. They'll do it not in front of you. So again, what's that accomplishing? You want them to stop doing what they're doing, but in hitting them, you're just making them do it more and behind your back. So it's really a complete loss of control when you hit your kids. It's complete and utter laziness if you hit your kids, because there are techniques that work, and that technique is timeout. And a lot of people scoff and laugh and say, oh, timeout doesn't work with my kid. Well, I'm sorry, that's bullshit. Because like I said, I've been working with kids for 8 years that are the most outlandish behaviors that you will ever see in your life. I've heard more profane words than I've ever heard in my life, more racist slurs from 5-year-olds in these jobs than adults in my everyday life. And as I said, there have been kids who come back to the shelter and try to break in, or 12-year-old kids that say they want to come and have sex with one of the girls that lives there who is also 12 years old. This just kids that will take a toy out of the blue playing next to another kid and just hit them over the head with it and crack their skull open. I've worked with the worst kids that you could possibly ever imagine, and you know what we did for them? Timeout and holds. That's all that they needed. And if your kid is to the point where a timeout doesn't work and that you have to be putting them in holds, that means probably that something is mentally wrong. And I disagree with a lot of medical practices, and I think that a lot of kids are overdiagnosed. But if you are truly somebody who has tried timeout patiently, because it takes time, it doesn't happen right away, you have to do it patiently and you have to do it consistently. If you have really tried this timeout technique and it's not working, and your kid is becoming violent or destroying things or hurting himself or hurting other people, that could be something that you want to talk to your doctor about, because mental disorders are sicknesses, they're illnesses, just like everything else. If you found out that your kid had lymphoma or cancer or of any sort or anything, you wouldn't just let them live in hope that they get over cancer. It's the same thing with a mental health disorder. They are chemical imbalances in your brain, and this has been proven biologically, and you can't fix it if you don't have help. And so if your child is very, very out of control, and by out of control I mean like physical, hurting, violent, and unable to be controlled, hitting them is only going to make them worse in the long run. And talking to your doctor and figuring out why they act this way, they could have an underlying mental health disorder that you don't know about that could be easily taken care of with something. And again, I don't agree with some of the medical practices with drugging kids up until they're zombies, but I do think that it works with kids. And so, like I said, there's so many reasons that physical abuse doesn't hurt or verbal abuse doesn't work. They are counterproductive to what you're trying to do. And so now that we've realized that this is only going to make things harder on you as a parent, we should talk about things that you can do that will deter this behavior that actually work. And like I said, time out is a godsend. I don't believe in God, but that phrase, I guess. Time out is amazing. It works with kids if you are consistent enough with it. All you have to do is establish the naughty spot. Tell them to do what you need them to do once. If they don't do it, tell them one more time. If they don't do it after that, don't even say anything except go in the naughty spot. If they can't go there themselves, then you can physically pick them up. You don't have to hurt them. You don't have to squeeze them, squeeze their wrists, squeeze their arms. It's not gonna help the situation. You can pick them up if you have to in a gentle basket hold, which is something really easy to do and doesn't hurt you and doesn't hurt them. But if they're not kicking, you can just pick them up and put them in the naughty spot. Walk away from them. Don't interact with them. The more that you engage and argue, you have to understand that a kid doesn't have an adult's logic, so it's not ever going to work the way that you're trying to make it work by just arguing back and forth with them, because they're not going to have the same ability to reason and logic as you are. So you just walk away. Don't say anything to them until they're sitting there quietly. Start the timer, 1 minute per year of age, and just wait. It's amazing. If you don't say anything to them, that's the hardest part, I think, for parents, is that they want to argue, they want to engage, but if you're just silent and you just bring them back to the spot over and over and over again, it's going to be a pain in the ass, but in the long run, it pays off, because you don't have to hit them and they'll know what behavior caused this outcome. Now, from there, if that still isn't working, then you start to take away things that they like. If you notice that they don't care when you take things away, then you can implement like a sticker reward system or something like that, a reward system where they do well for an X number of days and get this reward at the end of it. If they don't do well, they don't get this reward. There are multitudinous amounts of ways that you can parent without hurting your kid, and these are ways that ultimately are going to help you in the long run. If you take the time to put your 1, 2, 3-year-old in timeout and teach them that when you do something that's unacceptable, you have to sit out for a while, they learn that that behavior is unacceptable, and so they learn not to do what you didn't want them to do in the first place. And they also learn responsibility and consequences. And then at the end of the timeout, I know that a lot of people say, have them say I'm sorry and go give them a hug. But to me, I think that that's really phony a lot of times. It teaches the kids to say I'm sorry without any meaning behind it. So what I personally like to do is, do you know that you hurt him? Bring them over to the person. I worked in preschool a lot, and this would happen the most when somebody would bite somebody else. And they're 3 years old. They don't understand much, but they can understand when you talk to them. And so I'd bring one over to the kid that they bit that was either crying or had a mark, and I'd say, you hurt them. You hurt them, that hurts. And almost every single time, without me prompting them, that child that bit the other child would hug them or say I'm sorry. They're capable of feeling sympathy and empathy for other children. And so if you just show them the consequence of what they did and how it hurt somebody or how it broke something or how it was inappropriate, they understand that because they have feelings. In fact, a lot of kids are closer to their feelings than a lot of adults are. Okay guys, I think that I'm going to sum it up for now because my piece of paper is done. So if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. I would also love to talk about any parenting tips that you know or any information that you have. So thanks for listening.